All right, I think it's working. Sorry guys, I have really slacked this week. It has been a really hard week and I have not been able to get everything done, but I'm doing my video and I'm going to talk about the things that I learned. So in our reading, I couldn't help but think about the classes that I took last semester. I took family theories and dynamics and family advocacy and child family life education. I don't remember what it's called, but all of the stuff that we read this week reminded me of those things, especially family advocacy. And in that class, we talked about how to persuade people when you're talking about controversial things. And in the reading, it talked about how important it is to ask questions and to share stories and to involve the audience. And that's exactly what we learned about last semester. So I got to practice doing that last semester with some of the assignments that I did. And I feel like it helped prepare me for the workshop that we're going to do in the upcoming weeks. As I was reading through the material, some of the questions that stood out to me, one of them said, one of the significant principles illustrated by component display theory is the need to maintain a balance between teacher or leader talking with the participant. This balance is critical to the participant and involvement of participants. What can you do to maintain this balance? And I realized that in my practice teaching that it's huge to maintain that balance, because if you talk too much, then the other person becomes bored. But if you let awkward silence get in the way, then the other person gets uncomfortable. And so you really have to find that balance. I also found that while serving my mission, that you have to find a balance in asking questions and in teaching and in using different materials. It really is kind of hard to find that balance, but it is really important if your teaching is going to be worth it, I guess. Another question was, along with component display theory, Duncan and Goddard summarized other effective instructional principles that have been taught by David Merrill. Share one principle that was taught in the book that you especially appreciate and will implement in your family life education. I was thinking about this, and something that I really think is effective when I'm being taught is when the teacher invites me to do something. If I'm not invited to apply what I learn, then I really don't care as much, I guess. And so that's something that I feel like is important in this workshop, is inviting people to act and to utilize the information that we give them. Otherwise, they're not as likely, I guess, to remember the material. He also talked about how it's important to have them like remember, or not remember the words, but to reflect and say the words again so that it sticks with them. And I think that's important. Something that helps me in a discussion is to summarize the things that have been said. Otherwise, I'll look back and be like, okay, well, I learned a lot of good stuff, but I don't remember exactly what it was about. So that was one thing that stood out to me, is inviting someone. And going back to the mission, it says in Preach My Gospel that people aren't likely to change unless invited to do so. And I fully believe that, especially in this type of workshop. If you just give them a whole bunch of information, it might be good, but it might not really affect them all that much unless you say, all right, so with this, we would like to invite you guys to try this and maybe follow up. I mean, it wouldn't hurt to follow up and see how they're doing. I think that also shows that you care when you follow up and you're willing to ask them how they're doing with the commitment you gave them. Anyways, I watched Bessie's video, and some of the things that she said I really liked, because we're partners. And she talked about how with this workshop, it might be hard to not let it become a therapy session. And I thought that was interesting. I hadn't really thought about that until I realized that in my practice teaching, the person that like gave me the feedback, he was super chatty, and he almost like ranted on about how he felt, which isn't a bad thing, but it definitely felt like I was more of a therapist than a teacher. And I think it's important to remember that it is going to be a workshop and it's there to help people, but not in the therapy type way. Something that I think will help with that is having more materials that are directed towards the people rather than such a big discussion. I feel like discussions can turn into rants and therapy sessions. And so if we have a good balance of material and questions and stories, then that will definitely help. Something I really liked reading about was the role of the Holy Ghost in teaching. And one of the questions asks for how we can help involve the Holy Ghost in this teaching, especially if it's not a gospel-related topic. And something I thought about was a talk I read for one of my classes last semester about truth, and I think it was by Elder Oaks. I can't remember though. But he talked about how truth is truth, no matter how it's like stated. And so you don't have to bear your testimony to have the Holy Ghost there. If you're stating truth, then the Holy Ghost can testify in a sense of what is being taught. And even though it's not going to be exactly gospel related, I feel like this subject definitely has to do with like becoming the best person that you can. And part of that is hopefully having a relationship with God. And so it will be important to involve the Holy Ghost as much as possible without being obvious, I guess, about it. So that was something that I liked. I really liked the reading on gospel learning and the involvement of the teacher and the student and the Holy Ghost, and how all three of them work together perfectly. Like that's how it's supposed to happen. If everyone does their preparation and if everyone is participating, then the workshop or the teaching will go smoothly. Lastly, I just wanted to reflect on the practice teaching that I gave. I have been home from my mission for almost 2 years, and I have not taught in a really long time, so it was really rusty. But there are a lot of things that I realized I want to do better in my actual teaching. I want to be more prepared. I want to practice, even though it's uncomfortable. The practice was good because it helped me realize things that I want to change and do better, or take out, or questions I want to ask, and stuff like that. So this week's material was really good. I enjoyed learning about how to become a better teacher, and I feel like that will benefit not only in this class, but like in future careers, hopefully, and just in daily living. So there you go.